Welcome into a special edition of the Sports Den, kind of a weird one. We've been off for 2 weeks, and if you've got video on, you'll notice that it's just me, no Ian today. I'm your host, Ryver Griffin, and excited to be back. I was real bummed couldn't record the last 2 weeks. Has nothing to do with the Thanksgiving holiday. Just kind of a wild series of things going on. We were trying to plan around it because we knew it was going to happen. Wanted to see if we could still record, but alas, it did not work out that way. But excited to be back and really coming back at an interesting time in Denver sports, coming off what was just a crazy November. Nuggets are starting to struggle a little bit, so we'll talk about that. I mean, it's kind of the same old with that Avalanche, but I want to dive into a few of the numbers and just how dominant of a team they are and express that this is the best team in the NHL. Unquestionably, it'd be crazy to try and present an argument for any other team right now. I know there's other teams playing really, really well, but just nobody quite like the Avalanche. And then I think since we last recorded, the conversation around the Broncos, at least in my mind, has changed a little bit. Ian and I have been very open about how we feel about the Broncos, what we think their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, and that we have, I think, different expectations for the team than a lot of fans do, a lot of people do. But my opinion has started to skew a bit since we last recorded. So I'm excited to dive into that. Great being here on a snow day. And so I just want to start it out thinking back to my favorite Denver snow game ever. I guess it's Broncos, because not a whole lot of Rockies snow games, and obviously no Avalanche or Nuggets unless you count the Avalanche playing on Lake Tahoe, and really there was just snow on the ground. It wasn't really a snow game, but boy, was that a fun game. Got delayed. Avalanche came out and just crushed the Golden Knights. I don't know if the score necessarily reflected that. They had those beautiful uniforms. The Golden Knights had those atrocious uniforms on. But my favorite personally, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who share this, is the 2015 regular season game against the Patriots, where Brock Osweiler is the starting quarterback because Peyton Manning's dealing with his injury still. They've rattled off, I can't remember if it's 1 or 2 wins. They beat the Bears, and maybe they defeated somebody else with Brock Osweiler, but I think this was just their second game with Osweiler at quarterback. Knew it was super important for seeding, and they played a fantastic game. Goes into overtime. C.J. Anderson breaks off that long touchdown run. Snow is coming down so hard to win it, and just so fun. I wanted to check myself, make sure I wasn't missing any obvious ones, and one of them that popped up was the overtime win over the Steelers, where Demaryius Thomas caught the 80-yard touchdown and as a walk-off. But I don't remember that as a snow game. There may have been snow. Certainly the biggest moment of the game, there wasn't any snow coming down. That Broncos-Patriots game, I remember it as a snow game. There was snow consistently throughout. It was very much an element of the game and a memorable part of the game, not an afterthought with it. And so that's my favorite one. I love seeing the snow come down again, and I think it'd be amazing if we got a classic snow game this year. Maybe finishing out the season, Broncos have to lock up the 1 seed against the Chargers, get a snow game then. That would be pretty amazing. I mean, I guess that's probably the only opportunity for it to be like a classic, quote-unquote classic snow game, at least as long as it's in the Mile High City. You could have a classic one on the road in Kansas City. But, I mean, maybe Green Bay, I suppose, but I think it would have to be that Chargers game to really set the stakes high enough to be a legendary one, and that's assuming it's an important game for the Broncos at that point, and an important game for the Chargers potentially. But exciting to see. Also being back, I just wanted to touch on what November was like for Denver sports fans. We were certainly spoiled over that month. The best sports month I can ever remember that didn't involve championships, just talking regular season. Broncos went 4-0 in the month. Avalanche went 11-0-2. And the Nuggets went 11-3. So they were combined, and this was just me looking through the numbers, so I may have screwed it up at one point, but believe they were combined 26-3-2. That's absolutely incredible. There's not a lot to be disappointed by in the month. We'll talk about the Nuggets lately and their injuries, but overall, in the span of November, each team I thought had a really impressive win, at least one really impressive and important win on their season, and not really a lot of losses. So some of my favorite wins over the month of November, gotta go Avalanche versus Oilers, 9-1 in Edmonton. Really, it's always a measuring stick game between those two. They are two teams that like to get up for each other because they know how much world-class talent is involved. I never miss Avalanche Oilers games. You're just seeing as much top-end talent in a singular game that doesn't involve international teams or all-star teams as you can get in the NHL between the top-end talent the Avalanche obviously have, and then the top-end talent of Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and some other good players, but if we're talking world-class guys, it's those two, and then McKinnon, Makar on the Avalanche end, and previously Rantanen would definitely fit into that tier, probably a step below all those guys, but still a top 10 player in the NHL. I don't know if the Avalanche have 3 top 10 players now. They certainly have some other really, really, really good guys. Talking Devon Taves, talking Marty Necas, heck, Val Nichushkin. Some really, really high-end players, but it was a little bit different with Rantanen. So I guess the point I'm kind of stumbling into is it's always a very fun, exciting game that can be a bit crazy, and the Avs just showed their dominance. And I think that was the game that really put the league on notice. People paying close attention to the NHL knew the Avalanche were the best team in the NHL. And that was the one that really, you see a score like that, particularly against a team who is in the Cup 2 consecutive years, that's going to grab some attention. So that was my favorite Avs win of the month. And there were some other really, really fun ones in there. Nuggets beat the Rockets on one of those ugly-ass courts for the NBA Cup, but certainly a playoff-esque atmosphere, at least as close to one as you're going to get this early in the season. Both teams took the game very, very seriously, and the Nuggets come out on top in a bit of a nail-biter. And then, it shouldn't be a surprise, my favorite Broncos win of the month was Broncos-Chiefs. The Broncos have played some weird games this year and had some finishes that I think a lot of people are chalking up to fluky, but they've been the leader of the AFC West pretty well throughout the season. The Chargers were looking like the team that could win the division early in the season, and then the Broncos just ended up being the team that kept with it, kept winning games. And so as fans, we're all kind of staring at them and being like, there haven't been too many convincing victories. Really, your most convincing victory was against the Cowboys, who certainly weren't playing as well then as they are at this point. And you've had a lot of games that could have gone either way, and sure, they've been clutch and been finishing it out, but now the goal is to win the division because they're in position to how much trust are you actually putting in this team. Because all these games have looked real weird, is it just going to be, hey, this is the AFC West, this is the Chiefs division, they're going to find a way to win it somehow? And then the Broncos just go out and played what I thought was a really good game. And Bo had, I think, probably his best game of the season that day. Numbers might say the Cowboys game, and he didn't throw any touchdown passes in the Chiefs game. But for my money, that was his best game of the season. And to be able to take down the team that's won this division over and over and over again, and now the Chiefs have almost no chance to actually win it. Very, very much a statement game. And at the same time, it also just always feels amazing to beat a division foe. I mean, they beat the Raiders in that span, but the Raiders aren't a good team. And that game didn't really look like the Broncos asserting their dominance. It was like, that was a weird Thursday night game. Didn't like how that played out. But it is what it is. Broncos won it. They're on a 9-game win streak. And I want to talk a little more about the Avalanche here. But after talking Avalanche, I'm going to circle back to the Broncos. Because Ian and I have said throughout the season, hey, this is a good team. Don't know if this is a Super Bowl caliber team. But I have some new thoughts on that, and I want to dive into those. But first, I want to get into the Avalanche, who are just the best team in hockey. They still only have one regulation loss on the season, and it was a Saturday afternoon game on the East Coast. Teams tend not to play real well in those if they're coming from the Mountain or Pacific time zone. I'm not making any excuses, but it's just impressive that if they're even going to lose one, it had to be in this kind of weirder scenario that's a lot harder to play in. But they're 19-1-6 on the season. They're 5 points ahead of the next closest team in the standings, which unfortunately is the Dallas Stars. Dallas Stars have also played one more game than the Avalanche have, and that Avs are still 5 points ahead of the rest of the league. And the Stars are, I think, pretty comfortably the second best team in the NHL, so that you have this big gap on the Stars, who also then have a 4-point gap on the next best team, which is the Minnesota Wild. Go figure, the 3 best teams in the NHL are all in the Central Division. That's super impressive. Then we want to talk about, like, outside of the division. I mean, the Avalanche have a 10-point lead on every team that's not in their own division. That's just crazy. You look at some of these teams, like the Hurricanes, Lightning, Capitals, all very, very good hockey teams. And they just have a 10-point lead on them. And what, they are only 26 games into the season. That's crazy. That's crazy to think about. 10 points is the equivalent of 5 victories. 5 victories ahead of the rest of the NHL. And a lot of these teams that are high in the standings have played a game more than the Avalanche too. It's absolutely wild. Like I mentioned, just unquestionably the best team in the NHL. I don't know if this is bad behavior, but I've listened to a lot of different hockey podcasts just to see, is anyone going to try and make a claim that any other team is the best team in the NHL right now? And nobody is. They're all respecting the Avalanche. And, I mean, it's really not just the wins. They are scoring more than everybody else, and they're allowing fewer goals than everybody else. And that's not hyperbolic either. The Avalanche have scored more goals than any other team in the NHL and have allowed fewer than any other team in the NHL. They have the best offense and best defense in the NHL. And neither of those categories are particularly close either. If you look at it, we'll go goals per game and goals against per game. The Avalanche are first in both as well. For goals per game, they have 4.08. Next closest is the Anaheim Ducks, who sit at 3.62. Now, that is as big of a gap between first and second as second and 10th. So the Anaheim Ducks are just as close to the Avalanche, scoring as many goals per game as the Avalanche as they are to the Pittsburgh Penguins, who sit at 10th in the NHL. That's pretty staggering. Now, the goals against might be more staggering, and I knew the Avs had the best defense in the NHL. We're allowing fewer goals than everybody. I didn't even realize how big of a gap this would be. Now, the Avalanche had 3 consecutive shutouts. That certainly can help skew those numbers, especially early in the season when there's not as much data available. So I imagine the gap will shrink, but Avs are allowing 2.04 goals against per game. And the Capitals are number 2 in the NHL at 2.52. So the gap between first and second, the Avs and the Capitals, is as big as the gap between second and 15th in the NHL. 15th is the Winnipeg Jets, which makes it seem not as significant because you think, well, their goalie won the Hart Trophy last year, Connor Hellebuyck. Connor Hellebuyck has been injured. This is not the same Winnipeg Jets team as last season. I believe they're 5th, maybe 6th in the division right now, so it is not this gauntlet of a team, same as it was last year, or even as good as it was the season before. But it's just so impressive how well they're playing. They're ultra locked in, and they're not even fully healthy. And I don't know if being fully healthy is actually ever really a thing in the NHL. It's such a physical game that, like, what does it even mean? Like, you're never going to see a team be fully healthy. But they've got some key players who just aren't playing right now. Logan O'Connor hasn't played a single game. I don't even know how many games Sam Girards has missed at this point. I think Sammy G probably a more important piece for the Avalanche, especially at this point in the season with how good the fourth line has looked for the Avalanche, that they've been able to get away with not having LOC out there. I'm really excited to see LOC, though. He's such a hard worker, and my goodness, Parker Kelly is having quite the season. He's having a Logan O'Connor-esque season. So to get those two side by side again, I think will be really, really fun to watch. And on the penalty kill, that is such a strength to have, Parker Kelly and Logan O'Connor. And that's the other thing, is that Avs power play still has not been all that impressive. Like, there is a lot of room for growth with the power play, and we just know eventually that's going to be clicking. And once that's clicking, I mean, how can any team expect to stop the Avalanche? I don't have an answer for that right now. I don't even know what teams can hope for. They can hope to get the Avs to overtime, get a couple lucky bounces, potentially get it to overtime, and then, you know, it's anybody's game. Next goal wins. That's the only way to beat them. They've only been beaten regulation once. I know I've said it already, but I think it needs to be re-emphasized. Currently, they're on a 17-game point streak. Their cup-winning team in the 22 season, they had a longest point streak of 19 games. So if they can go two more consecutive games, which is absolutely doable, I wouldn't bet against the Avalanche in any game at this point. They could certainly match that. I think a lot of people want to have the conversation about, is this Avs team better than that Cup team? And rightfully so, I haven't heard much of that conversation actually happen. Because if you were to ask me, is this team better than that Cup-winning team, my answer would be no. That Cup team, I don't think we'll ever see a team as good as them again. And I'm not even saying we'll never see an Avalanche team as good as them again. I don't think we'll see an NHL team as good as that team was ever again. That being said, I do think they could and probably should put up more points in the regular season than that team did. I think they're built a little bit better for the regular season than that team was, just in that they've got an elite goalie tandem right now. And the Cup-winning team goalie tandem was all right. It was kind of middle of the pack, maybe a little bit better than middle of the pack. And having a good goalie tandem leads to a lot of wins in the regular season. It's not necessarily how you want to build your team for the playoffs. Like, obviously, you'd like to have as good of a goalie tandem as you can have, but that shouldn't necessarily be the priority to building a Cup-winning team. I think that's building down the middle and having a really good defensive core and a team that can play structured hockey. But it's obviously not anything you would turn down as having a good goalie tandem. And Scott Wedgwood has just been phenomenal. It took a while to get here, but I think it's worth having conversations of when the playoffs roll around. Let's say Wedgwood stays on the pace he's at. Should the Avalanche make him the starting goalie for the playoffs? Now, I think Blackwood at his best is better than Wedgwood, but Wedgwood has been so consistent, so good, and clearly the team has a lot of belief in him that I think it could be worth it. That there's a long ways to go before then, obviously, but I think it's something that we can keep on our minds. Hopefully Blackwood gets back to 100%. He's playing really well. I'm not even trying to criticize his play. It's more of a compliment to how Wedgwood has been playing. And I don't know. I just have a lot of confidence in this team. We'll see what the season kind of looks like once the Olympics roll around. I think that will throw a bit of a wrench into things, and hopefully that doesn't knock the team off course too much. But I have a hard time imagining it will. I think they're going to be locked in. I think they can win games without their top players. Wedgwood will probably be goalie still unless they pick him up for the Olympic squad because Hellebuck is injured. But I imagine the next guy up would probably be Joey Decord rather than Wedgwood. But I don't know. And so you'll have Blackwood probably on the Canadian team if he gets healthy. You're going to have McKinnon, McCarr, Taves all gone. You're going to have Natchez gone. And maybe Gabe gone as well. I would imagine Gabe will be on the Swedish team, but we'll see. It's been a really exciting season for the Avs. I believe it was last podcast we were on here. Ian and I were imploring anyone listening, watch as much of this team as possible because they're special. And you just may see something crazy any given night. And even if you don't see anything particularly crazy, I think by the end of the season, there's a very, very good chance the Avalanche have hoisted the cup, and the more memories you can have attached to this season, the better. You can look back and remember all the great games and remember how you watched so many of them. Remember the little moments, the moments of adversity for the team, the moments where, say, Parker Kelly started to break out and, who knows, maybe he has a big impact come Stanley Cup playoffs. Or maybe there's a player that's going to emerge even more throughout the season that, I don't know, has a crazy run in the playoffs and wins the Calder. Or Conn Smythe, excuse me, not the Calder. But it's a special season, and you should enjoy every second of it as you can, because seasons like this don't come around very frequently. So I guess that's all the thoughts I have on the Avalanche for now. Want to jump into the Broncos. Like I mentioned, Ian and I have framed this season a lot as this is a really good team. I think their ceiling is making the AFC Championship, and that would be really, really exciting if they could even do that. But they just don't have it to be able to push over the top. And I think if we were looking at this team in any other season, that would be true. However, this has been a really bizarre season in the NFL, and the Broncos have proven me wrong enough times during the season where they've come up clutch in the biggest moments when they needed the play to go their way the exact right time. It has. And at no point has that really felt lucky. It just feels like something that's in this team's DNA. And so I think they can compete with anybody in the NFL, and with the top dogs having kind of down years, why not the Broncos? If I look at the top teams who are struggling, the Chiefs are 6-6, may not even make the playoffs. Right? The Broncos have a 4-game lead on them with 5 remaining games on the schedule. The Chiefs just aren't going to win the division this year, so then they have to get in via the wild card, and they still have work to do for that. It's not out of the picture that they make the playoffs. They still very well could. But all that to say, even if they do make the playoffs, I don't know if teams are as scared of them this year as in years past. Obviously, there's still the element of they've been there, they've done it. They've got Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid running the offense. They know how to get it done when it matters. But they don't really scare me. They just don't. And also, we've never seen them have to go through, go on the road as much as they would have to in this playoff run if they make it. They're not going to have home field advantage in any game. If they get in, they will probably be the 7th seed, and no matter what, be on the road. We've never seen them do that. We've seen them go on the road and win, but at most it's been, just one game in a playoff series? Now they'd have to win 3 consecutive road games. I don't know. They don't scare me. The Eagles, 8-4. Still a good team. Still could certainly make the Super Bowl. And should point out both those teams who were in the Super Bowl last year, the Chiefs and the Eagles, Broncos beat both of them. And playing a second, or in the case of the Chiefs, it would be a third time. It can obviously be different, but Eagles 8-4, just lost to the Bears. Still a good team, still a team that should be feared once the playoffs roll around. But right now, I just don't think they're all that scary. They're certainly not as scary as they were last year, not as scary as they were the year before that, or the year before that. Bills are 8-4. They've had a weird year that I think has kind of gone under the radar on how weird it is. Just because the Chiefs and Eagles have had weirder years. But the Bills, they just haven't particularly impressed me at any moment. That's still the team I probably would want to face the least in the AFC come playoffs, but they're, again, I just don't think as good as in years past. Now, they've got 5 games remaining, and if they just rack up 5 more wins in those remaining 5 games, then I'm terrified of them. At that point, if they did that, they're probably the 5th seed or even the 1 or 2 seed if they knock off the Patriots. But as of right now, just not looking as impressive as they have in years past. And then the Lions, another really good team, having a weird year at 7-5. They don't scare me at all, and I don't think they'll even make the Super Bowl, so I don't know how much it's worth even discussing them. And so there's just like a group of a lot of teams that really see this opportunity up for grabs, and it's kind of anybody's game, so why not the Broncos? The Ravens are coming on, probably a team I should have discussed, but they've got some glaring weaknesses. I mean, the Patriots, they're the other team with as good of a record as the Broncos, but they have had the easiest schedule in the NFL, or one of the easiest schedules in the NFL, and still some huge weaknesses that I think the Broncos could exploit, and I would absolutely pick the Broncos in a game between those two. I think the Patriots are good. I'm not even trying to disrespect them. I certainly think they could beat the Broncos, but my expectation would be that the Broncos win, especially if it's in Mile High Stadium. Now it could be in Gillette, but if it's in Mile High Stadium, I just don't know if I have a much harder time picturing the Patriots actually winning that game. So the Broncos are on pace. They control their own destiny to be the first seed in the AFC, which at this point should absolutely be the team's goal. Get a bye week, have home field advantage throughout, right? And their remaining schedule isn't all that daunting. There's a couple tough games in there, but I think they could certainly do it. So this week they are on the road in Vegas. There's going to be more Broncos fans there than there are Raiders fans. The Raiders are terrible. I fully expect the Broncos to win that game. Then they play the Packers the next week. And I do not believe in the Packers one bit. They can certainly come in and win that game. They're a good enough team, but I would still bank on the Broncos winning that game. The Packers have had some terrible losses this year against the Browns, against the Panthers, and I believe the Panthers one was in Green Bay. They had that tie with the Cowboys, and at that point in the season, the Cowboys were bad. A little bit better now. I'm not impressed by them at all. They've got a really good defense. I'll give them that. They've got a really good defense. But it's the highs that people are kind of banking on, and those highs are defeating the Lions twice. And we discussed it. The Lions just don't look nearly as good as they have. Those are still good wins, but they're not as good of wins as what we maybe initially thought early in the season, because I think that was week 1 they crushed the Lions. The next week is against the Jaguars. Jaguars could be desperate, really trying to win their division, so that could be a tough game. Then they're on the road in Kansas City. That's always a tough environment. It's a Thursday night game. It's going to be weird. I would say that's probably their toughest remaining game. At that point in the season, the Chiefs could be really, really desperate where they absolutely need that win. Or maybe the Chiefs are out of it at that point. I don't know. I doubt that, but boy, would that feel great if the Chiefs still had an opportunity to make the playoffs, but they had to win out and the Broncos went into Arrowhead and beat them. That would be amazing. And then at home versus the Chargers, we'll see what that game's like. That could also be one where the Chargers are really desperate. So it always gets weird down the stretch. The Patriots have they have 4 more games, but 2 of them I think are really tough and 2 of them are very easy. So this coming week they're at home against the Bills. That's going to be tough. The Bills are going to want revenge. I would imagine the Bills are going to win that one. Baltimore the next week on the road in Baltimore. That one's interesting. I wouldn't, pencil either team in for winning that game. Like I said, the Ravens have some obvious deficiencies. But they now have the opportunity to win their division after starting 1-5. So that game's gonna matter for them. They're on a 5-game winning streak, I believe. It's gonna matter. And then their final 2 weeks are the on the road against the Jets and at home versus the Dolphins. Pencil those in for Patriots wins. So the Broncos certainly have to take care of business if they want that number 1 seed. And honestly, I think the greater importance is on the Broncos getting that first week bye versus the home field advantage. Because truthfully, I believe that if the Patriots are the 1 or 2 seed, that they would be knocked out of the playoffs prior to them facing the Broncos. So the Broncos would have home field anyway. So I think it's more about getting that bye. So it's interesting. Certainly on the table that the Broncos could get the 1 seed. And I think for the first time all season, I believe in the Broncos being able to win the Super Bowl. I still, if I were a gambling man, wouldn't put my money on it. I don't know who I'd put my money on, truthfully, but I think it's a possibility. I think it is certainly a possibility. Before we move on from the Broncos, I always like to give score predictions this week in Las Vegas. Broncos Raiders. I'm going to have the Broncos winning this one 25-12. I wonder how many games I've actually picked against the Broncos this year. I think I did with the Eagles and maybe one other, maybe the Chargers. I think I've picked them to lose twice all season, and they have 2 losses, but at least one of those I was incorrect about. So, yeah, exciting time to be a Broncos fan, Nuggets fan, and Avs fan, although the Nuggets are struggling a little bit right now. It's a little weird. They're on a 4-game home losing streak. This is a team that, especially early on in the season with how they're playing, I thought had a chance to go 41-0 at home. And so for them to lose 4 consecutive at home is alarming. If I'm being honest, it is alarming. The Nuggets should not be on this losing streak. As long as you got Jokic, you should not be losing at home. And they do have Jokic. The team has been injured. Christian Brown is out. Aaron Gordon is out. In this most recent game against the Mavs, Jamal Murray got injured and didn't play in the fourth quarter. Right, so your normal starters, you only have Jokic and Cam Johnson. Okay. That being said, this team, what makes it different from other teams in this era is that it has the depth to be able to sustain stuff like this. Now, that's a lot of injuries to sustain. I get it. But you brought Tim Hardaway Jr. in for a reason. You brought Big Val in for a reason. And it just needs to be better. I have not been impressed with the bench minutes lately. And really the most concerning thing, which has been pretty persistent throughout the season, but is really revealing itself right now, because before we could kind of laugh it off and be like, oh, they're winning big. They're dominant. They've got one of the best offenses and defenses in the NBA. But it's that they can give up some really big runs. Now, basketball is a game of runs. Teams are going to go on runs, but these runs are way too big and at the wrong moments. Just the other night against the Mavs, I believe it was a 12-0 or 14-0 run by the Mavs in crunch time to bring them in. Not only to bring them back into the game, but take the lead, and ultimately they go on to win that. There's no excuse for that. These 4 games, they should have won all of them. They're at home, and they aren't against particularly good teams. Now, the Bulls have been off to a good start, and you can look at the Spurs record, but the Spurs were without Wemby, and I'm sorry, Bulls, you're not the Nuggets. The Nuggets are a better team than them, and they need to take care of business when it comes to this. What they're doing is building big leads early, letting them kind of diminish, and when they normally go on their own big run, they just seem kind of defeated. They have low energy, they're giving up easy baskets, and they're not moving much on offense, being pretty stagnant. So making the offense really, really difficult on themselves. They're in some sort of funk. They need to break out of it. I don't think it is just the injuries. Now, I don't think it's all bad what's been going on with the Nuggets. Obviously, Jokic is still the most incredible player in the world, right? We've been waiting for the Cam Johnson emergence to happen, and I think it has. It was just a couple games ago against the Spurs. I thought he was really the highlight for the Nuggets in that game. He made big bucket after big bucket after big bucket, was really, really active on defense, moving the ball. He just did everything so phenomenally well, and I thought that was his best game of the season. So Cam Johnson really starting to come on and be what we hoped he could be. I don't think he'll always be as good as he's been lately. I think he'll kind of come back a little bit, but we at least get an idea of when he gets hot what it can look like. Really impressed with Spencer Jones. Now, there's been some minutes where he's been on the court, and I don't think it's inherently his fault, but the run starts to happen while he's out there quite frequently. But I really like Spencer Jones. He's a guy that I hope continues the production he's been having, and by the end of the season, we're saying he should be in that playoff rotation. He's shown a little bit more offense than I thought he had, and really what that's coming from is he's playing a little bit of that Christian Brown type of role where he's cutting hard to the basket and finding himself wide open right there, and Jokic is finding him, and he's dunking it, laying it in, creating really easy buckets for himself. We knew coming into the season that he had that three-point shot, which I was going to say looks really good. It doesn't look good, but it goes in. It's quite an ugly shot, but he's making the threes, and I thought that's really all he was going to be is 3 and D, but he's been 3 cut to the basket in D, and his defense is so much better than I thought it could be. I, prior to this season, hadn't watched a lot of Spencer Jones, but you hear a lot of the murmurings that the coaching staff really likes him. He's putting up good numbers in the G League and being an elite defender there. And maybe it's a bit judgmental, but when you look at him, he's built kind of boxy. And so I had a hard time envisioning how athletic he actually was. I was like, okay, well, he's strong. He's going to be able to be physical with guys. That'll be what makes him good at defense. And sure enough, that is absolutely true. He's a very, very physical defender, but he also can move with the ball so much better than I thought. I just would have never figured he had the kind of lateral movement that he does. So I really hope he continues to get minutes and makes the most of them in the way that he has been recently. Because, man, would that be an awesome surprise? He was not like a highly touted guy out of college. He was not a guy we were paying attention to. Like, okay, kind of like with Peyton Watson. We monitored Peyton Watson's progress in the G League because we had heard so much about him and thought, okay, maybe he could be a role player for the Nuggets. Let's see how good he actually is. He jumps out of the gym, ultra athletic, and was a first-round pick for the Nuggets. None of that is true for Spencer Jones. It was more he was in the G League and played so well that it impressed. As Nuggets fans, we've been as lucky as any fan base for finding a player that we had zero expectations of and then becoming a really good player with Nikola Jokic. No expectations on him. Didn't even really think he would probably stay in the NBA. And then he becomes the best player in the NBA for half a decade. Hopefully more. So we've already been lucky with that, and by no means do I think Spencer Jones will become best player in the NBA or even an elite player, but it would be really cool to get another one of those guys where there are zero expectations and they turn out to be a key piece for a championship team potentially. So I really like Spencer Jones. I think P-Watt has had some good moments, although been a bit up and down. What I love is he's continuing to rebound the basketball, which he's done at a very good level this year. And really in years past, that has been a weakness of his. I've been infuriated by his rebounding many times, but now he seems to have figured it out. And so I'm loving that. I'm still very optimistic on this team. It just right now is hopefully the worst run of games for the Nuggets over the course of the entire season. And we're in the middle of that, so we have to talk about it, have to acknowledge that they need to be better. And sure, injuries are an excuse, but I don't think they tell the whole story as to why the Nuggets have been as bad as they've been lately. I guess that's really all I have for today's podcast. It's been fun trying to do it solo. I've never solo podcasted before, so this was interesting for me. Excited to have Ian back. Just so everyone's aware, moving forward, this is probably going to look a little bit different, at least for a while. Probably going to go to more remote podcasts. Full transparency, I'm moving up to the mountains for the winter, up to Georgetown. Going to be a ski bum. Always been my dream. And Ian will still be down here on the Front Range. And so school's going to be closed, so we won't even have this podcast studio. So we're still trying to figure out what we're going to make it look like. I think we want to do our recordings on Wednesdays still. So I would anticipate they come through on Wednesdays. But I would just, if you start seeing them being recorded on Thursdays or Mondays or whatever it is, that's the reason for that. Excited for this change, excited to see how this podcast continues to progress. Make sure you follow us on social media. YouTube, we're at the Sports Den. And then on Instagram, we're at sports_Denver. Holy cow, I have not done this in a while. So just be sure you're following there. I've mentioned in the past that I've done some live game Instagram posts for the Nuggets, and I want to continue to do that for the Nuggets and Avs. So if that's something you're interested in, be sure to engage with that. Leave some comments. Subscribe to our Spotify. Today's Spotify Wrapped. I went through mine, and sure enough, Sports Den was in my top 5 most listened to podcasts, which is funny because I listened to this a million times before actually uploading it. So then once it's uploaded, I don't listen to it nearly as frequently. But thanks for listening. We really appreciate it. We appreciate all the support, all the listeners, and stay tuned for what's next. Thanks.